who went to visit Richard Branson at his island.
Theoretically, if a child can learn a sport, a musical instrument, a whole bunch of languages by the time they're 7, why not entrepreneurship? First thing I wanted to do was to become a scientist. I actually went to study applied biology in Greenwich University, and in true entrepreneurial style, I dropped out. I had received an invite from Branson to speak at a conference he was putting on his private island. There are very few people on the planet who have as much experience and insight as I and our organization do on this particular topic, right?
What is he actually like as a person?
So he's super fit. He will get up in the morning, play tennis for a couple of hours. He eats super healthy. There were like 100 millionaires and other billionaires on the island, and they were saying the same thing.
Run us through the best story you have from that island.
I'm really competitive. I'm like, this guy's not beating me. Because at this point, this is like Great Britain versus America. I was gone. I said, that's it, I'm done. What I took away from the island was that there's a lot more possible than I thought.
Yes, guys, what is going on? It's Ethan, and I'm in a bit of a different location to normal. So I've decided that I will start my own podcast. I know I'm very inconsistent with posting, and I say this every video, but hopefully we'll get back to it. So as you guys know, my last few videos have been about business, as I have my own content creation agency. So I thought, why not try and gain some knowledge from the people that know a lot more than me? So today I have Julian Hall. How you doing, Julian?
Hey, Ethan. How you doing? You right?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thank you for being here.
No problem.
So obviously I know you, I've known you for a few years. Would you just like to tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Julian Hall. I'm the CEO and founder of a now 10-year-old social enterprise called Ultrapreneur, and we teach entrepreneurship to kids from 7 to 18 years old.
Okay, so I've got a bit of experience with Ultra Education. So could you just tell everyone why you do what you do? Because I feel like the thing that interests me isn't what people do, but it's the reason behind what they do. So could you just dive into that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so there's 2 main reasons. So I started my first business when I was 18 years old in a 1-bedroom flat in Stonebridge with some friends of mine. And it was accidental. So the idea behind it was we were looking at the clothes that we saw in music videos, couldn't afford to buy them. So my girlfriend at the time, who was studying at the London College of Fashion, she could make those clothes. So that solved a problem for us. We could look cool on a budget. But we also realized it solved a problem for others. So friends, you know, and other young people across London, across the UK. So we started a fashion company, and that went really well. And I always say it kept us out of trouble for a few summers. But the skill set that we picked up from that, the idea that I could come up with the solution to a problem, create that product, and then make some money from it, that kind of closes the loop on what entrepreneurship and business is all about. So that really stayed with me. It was really quite empowering that I was able to do that. And so my ambition was to always stick with that theme in my life. So I was kind of bitten by that entrepreneurial bug. The challenge was that back then, you know, there was not much support around. I didn't have a rich uncle with a business somewhere. So I kept failing. And then, you know, I ended up, you know, starting, you know, going into the world of work, into investment banking, and then kind of circled back to entrepreneurship. The other reason why I did it was when my daughter was young. So when she's you know, just turned 17, when she was, about 6, 7 years old, I would notice that she would kind of mimic me, right? So she would like pretend to make YouTube videos. In fact, she actually started making YouTube videos. And there was one time when she, at a kind of barbecue that we were having in the summer, she brought all of her cousins out to the garden and said, right, everyone, we've made you stuff to buy. And if you don't have any money, we've made you credit cards too. And everyone was looking at me like, what have you done to this poor child, right? You know, she should just be playing with like girl stuff when you're teaching her all this business stuff. And actually, I hadn't taught her anything. She was just mimicking her dad, which is what kids do. They mimic what they see through play. And so I, you know, together with my wife at the time, she was an expert in early years. I realized, oh, wow, this is like something that kids could pick up. So theoretically, if a child can learn a sport, a musical instrument, a whole bunch of languages by the time they're 7, why not entrepreneurship? So those two experiences, my own personal experience and then the experience I had of my daughter, made me realize that actually this should be available to young people everywhere.
Yeah, so if we start from when you're 18, we'll build it up. So when you were 18, I don't know about you, when I was 18, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So what was life like? Did you have any idea what you wanted to do? Did you always want to become business owner? Because you said it was an accident. So was that something you always wanted to do, or was it just after you started doing it, you got more interest?
Yeah, so actually the thing I wanted to do was to be like my eldest cousin, he was like super cool. He was tall, played basketball, wore Armani jackets. And I just looked up to him, and he was a scientist. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a scientist. Until one day I discovered that scientists are, in the main, broke. Yeah. So I thought, maybe science isn't for me. I actually went to study applied biology in Greenwich University, and in true entrepreneurial style, I dropped out. And I went to then study something which I thought was going to be on the up and up. So we're talking early 90s. I thought, you know what? This technology stuff is going somewhere. Let me learn more about tech. So I dropped out of uni to learn technology stuff. And then that's what got me into the world of tech, which I then used to try and power different businesses of mine. So I was always into technology in some regard. But yeah, the first thing I wanted to do was to become a scientist.
It's funny how
picture me in a white coat.
Yeah, no, I can't.
Yeah, me neither.
Goggles on, yeah. One thing over the past few years, I'm only 20, that's been interesting to me is university, because we've had a brief discussion before about business or university. Like, you can't really, or it doesn't seem like you can combine them. And to give a bit of context, when I must have been 18, so a few years back, I was so against going to university, and I was like applying for all these apprenticeships, and I had an interview with the BBC. And I didn't get it, so then I was like forced to go to university. But now I'm glad that I go to university because it's given me all these opportunities. So 2 parts to this question. Do you think, as someone that's gone down a different path, do you think university is important? And do you push your kids to go to university or work hard in school? Or do you think there's also other paths for them?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in reverse, starting with my kids. So my 2 youngest, my daughter 17 and my son 14, they're very, very different academically. So my daughter is very academic, my son is very creative. So my daughter wants to be a neurosurgeon, so she is going to go down a very, very academic route. And my son is an actor, and you know, he's just super talented in that respect. So for what my daughter needs to do, she has to go to uni. For what my son needs to do, he doesn't have to, right? So I think that university is really down to that child's learning style and their trajectory. And I think it's difficult for parents and educators to kind of identify that, because the default is go to university, right? But I mean, today, most entrepreneurs, particularly of my generation, generations before, even generations after me, didn't go to university and actually hire people that go to university. So, I mean, I've hired people who are way more qualified than me academically. Yeah. But they would never start the business. So in some ways, university, the longer you're in academia, the lower your risk appetite becomes. Because academia is very much an institution, and most institutions, particularly academia, it doesn't promote risk. And, you know, they know that. I mean, I'm one of the entrepreneurs in residence for the Open University, so I'm not against university, but there is there are pros and cons to it. So depending on what you want to do, if you have to go down a profession which requires strict academic qualifications, like my daughter being a neurosurgeon, or you want to be a lawyer, you want to be a teacher, you know, stuff like that, you want to be an accountant, then you kind of have to do that thing. If you want to go down a route which doesn't require you to have a professional academic qualification, then you're probably better off learning by doing that particular job type as soon as possible, right? However, with that said, the university experience, I believe, is different to when I was young, because now with universities, there's a lot more, the experience of it is and can be a lot more practical. And I think, as with most things, if you go into university with the view that I'm going to use this time to build my networks, to get as much experience as I can, to access the doors that they can open that I can't, you've really got to work university. You can't just like skim the experience. If you lean into that experience and try and get the most out of it, I think the university ecosystem is really good to build an experience and a network effect that you can springboard from into the next part of your journey.
Yeah, because I always used to just think, why would anyone want to go to uni? But I realise we need doctors, we need police, all these things, we need them. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just depends on the person, the type of person you are. The next thing I wanted to touch on was you recently won an award, I believe, the Future Ed Awards. I've been to your office. You've got quite a few awards in the cabinet. How much do these awards, how significant are they in your journey? Like, how much is that how you would sense success in your journey?
Yeah, the awards thing for me is it's difficult, because when we first started, I was trying to do the thing that you're supposed to do, which is to get recognition for your work. So we really went out on a kind of an awards mission to try and capture as many awards as we could. And we were starting up, so that's probably the right thing to do. And, that worked. Now, I thought the more awards we got, the more business we would get, but that's not true.
Yeah.
The two do not necessarily marry all the time. So there came a point where I said, I'm not gonna apply for any more awards. I'm just gonna stop this, because going for awards, it takes time and effort, and that time and effort was removing me from day-to-day stuff. So I said, look, we had won like 15 awards by that time. So the awards you see in the office, I've got an equal amount at home of awards, right?
Yeah.
So I was kind of seeing, would this benefit the business? I wasn't doing awards for my own ego. I was getting the awards to see if it would help us commercially. Now, that's very hard to measure. I suspect it probably did, but I couldn't directly correlate the two. So I thought, you know what, let me stop doing that and then just focus on the business. And then the irony of that is, the minute I stopped doing it, the more awards came my way. Yeah. So the last 3 or 4 awards we won, it wasn't stuff we applied for. It was stuff that just came to us just through, I guess, the universe doing its thing. And probably the last 3 or 4 awards that we've won have significantly correlated towards us winning more business. So, I guess it's been something which has worked for us in the long term. Yeah. And I think it's a long-term play. So actually, and again, the function of me winning awards often is more about being able to use those award platforms as a way to showcase what our young entrepreneurs are doing. And again, that has worked, because some of the awards that I've won, or the rooms that I've been in, I've been able to bring some of the kids and young people along through those doors, and then they've won awards on those same platforms. So yeah, that's worked out quite well.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to move on to was probably quite a significant point in your journey. I think you had quite an eventful summer last year. You went to visit Richard Branson at his island. So could you just tell us first of all how that came about? Sure.
So one of the awards which I mentioned I didn't want to do, and I just, thought, actually, haven't got time for this, was a Virgin Founders Unite Award. So this was year before last, so top of 23. Was actually end of 22. A colleague who I respected said, you should go for this award. And I said, nah, I haven't got time. I don't want to do it. Yeah. And they said, no, you should really do it. I think you should do it. And on their nod, because I really kind of respect them as an entrepreneur, I entered the award, and annoyingly, the award process put me and the other 2 nominees through this process where we had to get a pitch coach, because we had to go and do like I think it could have been a 1-minute pitch to an audience of, the Virgin network. And, I think myself and the other 2 nominees were probably thinking, we know how to pitch. Yeah. We don't need to learn how to pitch, right? But respectfully, we'll go through the process. And actually, I just emptied my head of it and said, you know what, Julian, put your white belt on, stop thinking you know it all, and you can learn something, right? Yeah. And actually, throughout the process, there was one critical thing that I learned from this pitch coach. So we went through this process, and I thought, if I'm going to do this, I may as well just give it my best. And there was actually one other organisation who, when I saw that they were in the running for it, I thought, they're going to win. I just thought, because I really liked them, and I just thought, they're going to win. Anyway, so I thought, as long as and this is just a principle of mine, as long as I do my best, then the outcome is what the outcome is. Right. It doesn't matter to me what the outcome is. What's more important is, did I do my best? So I thought, you know what, just do your best. And we won. We won that award. Yeah. And that was top of 23 now. So then less than a year later, I received a text message from someone at Virgin saying, Julian, you're about to receive an email. It's not an April Fool's joke, right? So I'm looking at this text message thinking, what are you talking about? So then when I went to my email, I had received an invite from Branson to speak at a conference he was putting on his private island. And I thought, because if I'd seen that before the text, I would have thought it was a joke. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, wow, this is like amazing. It was, pretty surreal. And then a few months later, I was on Necker Island in middle of July.
Do you get nervous for these type of things? Like in general, just talking in front of people, but especially this one's quite a big one.
Yeah, so this is where the concept of being authentic really matters. So because I'm really about this kind of entrepreneur life, and I'm really about the thing that I'm doing for young people, I know that what I have done and the insights that I have are unique, to the point where there are very few people on the planet who have as much experience and insight as I and our organization do on this particular topic, right? So for that reason, I can walk into a room, a conversation with that confidence that, my value is well placed here, right? And so for that reason, when I went to Necker, that part of me was okay. The part of me that wasn't was that I'm going to be around a whole bunch of entrepreneurs who are way more successful than me, right? And that kind of, it didn't make me nervous, but it just made me think that it was humbling, right? I mean, to be on Necker Island, to be around Branson, I mean, that in itself is humbling. But I was around like a bunch of super successful entrepreneurs. So it was very, very humbling. But it was also really, it was a great experience to hear those entrepreneurs that I really looked up to, who saw a huge value in what we do as an organization.
Yeah. What is he actually like as a person? Because I imagine, was this your first interaction with him?
Yeah.
So I imagine you must have had like some sort of expectation. Was he as you expected, or?
Yeah, so normally when I go into situations like that, I have no expectations. I'm often too busy to even consider expectations, right? And to overthink that. So I just went into it with an empty head. When we got the boat from Tortola, which is a neighbouring island, to Necker Island, it was like a half an hour boat ride. And when we got to the pier, where they call Red Deck, in the kind of Virgin Red, Branson was there to welcome us. And my first thought was, that's really interesting. You don't have to do this. You could just be in your ivory tower and kind of wave to us or whatever. But he made the time to greet us individually, and I thought, wow, that's really nice of you. Yeah. And that was the thread for the entire time. He came and he had breakfast, lunch, dinner with us. He, took us on tours of the island, on hikes. He would come and he was super approachable. He would come and just chat to us about stuff. And so what I gathered from him was that he was really down to earth, and he was obviously very much about using it's not even so much wealth, because lots of people have wealth, but he has influence on making a change in the things that are important to him. So, I don't know, for the last few decades, quite possibly, that's what he's really been about. So that, for me, really impressed upon my own journey, that actually the person who's like a multi-billionaire isn't spending more time making money. They're spending all their time making impact, which is what my organization is all about. Yeah. I just need the billions.
The island.
And the island and all the trimmings.
So what were 3 things that you learned from him? Because I've seen the pictures. You seem to be having good conversations.
Yeah, so the 3 things that I learned from him was, number 1, so he's in his 70s and he's not stopping. I mean, in terms of fitness and health, I mean, he's up there. I went on a bike ride with him and I couldn't keep up, right? And I think there was like 15 people went on a bike ride with him, and only 3 people kept up with him, right? So he's super fit. He will get up in the morning, play tennis for a couple of hours. He eats super healthy. So from a fitness and health perspective, it was just really eye-opening. And from the perspective of drive, it's obvious that he's not slowing down. He doesn't have to do any of this stuff. He could just chill on his island and do billionaire things, right? Whatever billionaires do. But he's not doing that. He is obviously using his time to do good, make impact, and use his influence to solve problems around the world that he cares about. And that was just really inspiring. It just made you realize that even though everyone says money isn't everything, the person who has all the money is demonstrating that there is a lot more to life and your own purpose. And a lot of the other, there were like 100 millionaires and other billionaires on the island, and they were saying the same thing. One of them actually said to me that their legacy isn't going to be that I've made lots of money. That's not a legacy, because there's someone who's always going to have made more money than you, who's got a bigger yacht. They wanted their legacy to be making impact on the things that they really cared about. So that was the first thing the first thing was that his health and fitness was just up there, right? Like I've never seen a 70-year-old man that fit and healthy, not one that I physically met and hung out with. Secondly, he's not chilling out. He's in his 70s and he's still going super hard. And that in itself is inspiring, because I guess, and I think he said it, what are you going to retire and do? Just retire and just shrivel up in the corner? That's not life. If you really love what you're doing, you're going to do it anyway. Doesn't matter how old you are, right? And then the last thing was that you should probably, as in you, me, everybody, should probably think bigger, because he's got an island and it's sustainable. He's rewilding animals that are going extinct. Everything is kind of solar powered. And it's akin to what you would see on Tony Stark type stuff, right? And it doesn't have he doesn't have the weird undertones of other billionaires, right? He's still a nice guy. He's just still a nice guy, still approachable. And so it made me just think that the idea that you have all this money and that it strips you of who you are, and it strips you of your morality, that doesn't have to be the case, because it is true to say that a lot of people with a lot of money, they're not happy, and they're not the nicest people, and not because they're idiots, but because sometimes they've been jaded, they've gone through rough stuff, so they can be a little bit prickly as individuals. He's not like that. He's managed to navigate that, and that's it's quite an inspiring model to work towards.
Yeah, I feel like he's one of those guys where if you just met him not knowing who he was, you just think he's a regular guy, which I think is, if you're anyone but a business owner with a lot, I think that's the way you should be. So I think I may have heard the best story you have, but could you run us through the best story you have from that island? If there's anything that comes to mind.
The best story from the island. So it was probably that bike ride. Yeah. So we went one morning, he was like, okay, we're going to do this bike ride. And both himself and the staff said, look, it's not an easy ride, but I'm thinking I go to the gym all the time, I'll be all right. I haven't been on the bike for a while, but so we met 6 a.m, went over to Tortola, which was I think about 20 minutes. No, it was Virgin Gorge, for about 20 minutes on the boat. And he said the reason why we're setting off so early is because the minute the sun rises, it's really going to be quite hot and it's going to drain you. I'm thinking, don't worry, I'm a black guy, I can do this, right?
Yeah.
So we get there, we get on the bikes, and we set off. And we get to the first hill, and I can't remember if I made it up the first hill, but the first hill was hell.
Yeah.
Right? And I was sitting there thinking, that wasn't easy, right? So then there's another flat, because it's basically hills and flats all the way up. So he goes all the way up the island, the hill of the island, then down and round and a few times. So the idea was just to go all the way up, and that was the mission for everyone. So we get to the second hill, and I just couldn't make it up the second hill, right? So I'm now questioning my entire gym regime here. Yeah. And so I get off the bike, I pedal, try and make up the third hill, couldn't make it up either. By this time now, he's gone. Yeah. Him and like 2 or 3 others, they're gone. So I see another one of the guests, a lady there, and I said, right, what's the game plan? And she said, look, we're just gonna take one hill at a time. Anyway, we did another 2 hills, and I was gone. I said, that's it, I'm done. As I look back, there was a van picking people up. So the van was full of people picking people up. Yeah. I looked at this van and I said, I'm not going out like this. There was no way I'm getting on that van, right? So I gave them the bike and I said, I can't bike, but one thing I can do is run. So I ran up the rest of the hill. I ran up the rest of the hill, which is about 20 minutes. But by this time, the sun was out. Right? So, I mean, I was just draining like a bad battery. But I made it up. I made it up to the top. So they all saw me running up to, and I don't think anyone had. So that was cool. And then the other really cool experience I had was, he has an ice bath on the, just because he's got an ice bath, he's got a spa, he's got all this stuff, right? He's got an ice bath. And there was a really, really lovely guy I met from the States, quite a bit younger than me, who's got like a tech startup. And as we got off the bike ride, he said, Julian, this is the best time for us to do this ice bath. So I've done ice baths before, and I think the longest I've been in an ice bath is like a minute or so. So anyway, so we get in this ice bath, and some of the other guys are starting to film. So I'm thinking, okay, we're gonna do like a minute. So we do a minute, and he's still in the ice bath. And I'm thinking, oh no. And now like it's super, super cold. So 2 minutes go by, he's not moving. 3 minutes go by, and I'm really competitive. I'm like, this guy's not beating me. Because at this point, this is like Great Britain versus America. It was bigger than just he and I, right? This was like a big deal. Yeah. I'm doing it for the UK, right? 3 minutes go by, he's just chilling. I'm like, oh my goodness, please just save me. 4 minutes go by, he's still there. 5 minutes go by, he then gets out. And I'm thinking, you know what? If this is going to be a defeat, it's got to be like a marked defeat. Yeah. So I stayed in there for another minute. And from what I understand, the 6 minutes that I stayed in was like a record for people on the island, right? But I was zapped for the rest of the day. But yeah, that was probably my greatest achievement whilst I was there.
Greatest achievement in life.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So does he, Richard Branson, does he do the cycle and the ice bath like very regularly?
So he plays tennis, I believe, 2 hours every morning at like 5:30, 6 a.m. And then he'll do the bike ride like twice a week, and he'll hike a couple of times a week. So there isn't a day that goes by that he's not super active.
That's pretty impressive.
Very impressive.
70-year-olds as well. Was there one thing that you noticed that changed after you left, like within not just how you were working your business, but just life in general that you took away from the island?
Yeah, that what I took away from the island was that there's a lot more possible than I thought. That there's a group of people out there who just think bigger than not the average person, but the average entrepreneur. There are just people who just think big, and they don't consider barriers, they consider ways around. And it was just a paradigm shift. I mean, it's obvious to say that trip changed my life. I guess it's just in the ways in which I can describe it more articulately is that I came back with a renewed sense of what I was doing and the scale and size of which it could and where it could go. And you also realize that, again, the old saying of you become the average of the 5 people that you're around.
Yeah.
The people that I met, they didn't have 2 heads and 8 arms. They were just like you and I.
Yeah.
So you then think to yourself, well, why have you been able to achieve so much if you're not like a superhuman individual? And a lot of it is because of the people that they stay around. So they spend money to be around people who will take them to the next level. They're very intentional about it.
Yeah.
So it's not like a chance meeting. Oh, I bumped into this millionaire when I was out and they gave me some advice. No. They plan to be around people who are at their level or above. They spend money on it so that those interactions, those experiences can personally take them to a next level or take their businesses to a next level. So that's something that I really took back with me, is that I've got to be more intentional about the people that I'm around. And it's not, I love my friends, love my family, they're
Yeah.
cool, but just creating a new group of people that I spend time with intentionally so that if I want to become something, I am around the people that I would like to be like.
Yeah.
Because as much as you think you can trick human nature, you probably can't. And there's a lot of learning you do through your experiences with other people. And you can essentially, and it's the mastermind principle, where you can shortcut your journey by borrowing and learning from the experiences of others.
Is that something when you were maybe starting your first few businesses you had to do, where you just had to kind of like cut off people and stay away from distractions? And did you find that difficult?
I didn't have to cut people off. What I did was minimize my time with them. So what I found is that true friends who I've had for decades, since I was a teenager, I don't need to see them every day. We don't need to talk all the time. But I can lock back in with them and we're cool. We can pick up where we left off. And so I didn't have to cut people off. But what I did have to do was to act in accordance with where I wanted to be, not who I was spending my time around. So I was very conscious of that. I was very conscious that I would have to do things which were different to the people that were in my immediate circle, because the people in my immediate circle, we were just different. I'm not going to say it's not about me being better than anybody.
Yeah.
We're just on different journeys. Right? And my journey just requires me to do things which are different. And that's what I just became comfortable with at an early age, is knowing that what I would do, my routine, the way that I thought, the risks that I took, the, just the way that I was, it was okay to be different to the people around me, and that was fine. Whether or not that meant people would stop talking to me, I'd be alienated, whatever that meant, I was okay with it. That was the thing. I didn't feel the need to fit in.
Yeah.
I felt the need to exercise my own authenticity and exercise what I thought was right for me without fear of being, excluded from anything or anyone around me.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. It reminds me of, I'm not sure if you know who Alfie Best is. He's a billionaire. He was doing a podcast with his son, who's a millionaire. And he was saying how when his son was growing up, his son used to do boxing. So he would have to miss fights to focus on business instead of seeing his family. And I remember at the time thinking, I think family's a bit more important. But I guess for everyone, it's kind of just whatever works. For the person, there's no right or wrong way of doing it. So yeah, just what do you think about that? I know family is very important to you. So
yeah. So I cheated a little bit because I included my family in my business.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a cheat, and I mean that worked out for me. So if you look down my timeline, a lot of the times I've won awards, even my last award, the Future Ed Award, my daughter was with me.
Yeah.
Right? My family have been with me through the entire journey of Ultra Education, even my extended family, even friends of mine. So that kind of meant that I didn't have to be disconnected from them. It wasn't the idea of I've got to spend 80 hours a week in the office and I don't see my family. A lot of the time they were at events with me and, they were part of the story that I've even told today. So that may not necessarily be the case for the next phase of what I'm doing, but I was able to kind of solve that problem because I wanted to make sure that I was as present as much as possible for them. So it just so happened that how things transpired, that my family were a part of the business and a part of the growth in the business.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because I remember, as I said at the time, I was thinking that's a bit weird. And he said that he doesn't regret it, but kind of over the years of doing my own businesses, you kind of just learn that it's whatever works for each person. So we're a bit short for time, so we're just going to try and speed through some questions. So over the past, I've been doing business for about 2 years now. And even just the first 2 years, I've had to learn quite a few lessons. So I'd imagine you over however many years have learned quite a few lessons. So what would you say is like the biggest lesson you had to learn throughout your business journey so far?
The biggest lesson I've had to learn on my business journey so far is to trust the thing that you are genuinely passionate about and have a genuine interest in. So kids entrepreneurship wasn't something that lots of people were doing. Almost no one was doing it.
Yeah.
But I just had a genuine interest in it, and I just believed that it would go somewhere. And I was confident in my capability around that. And I was also confident that if it collapsed and burned, that I would still be able to recover quickly. So that's the thing that for me was really important, because otherwise, I always say that you have to be passionate about your business. Otherwise, it's not going to create enough value for the people that you want it to benefit, right? But you've also got to be passionate about it, because you won't stay the course otherwise. And things just take a lot longer than you think. Most overnight successes are like 10 years in the making. So for me, that, which is the slogan of our company, do what you love, it's there because I think that, and in everything I've seen, in all the successful entrepreneurs that I've seen, that is a key theme for all of them.
Oh yeah, that was a question I actually wanted to ask you, because yeah, as you said, your slogan is do what you love, but do you feel that as a business owner, sometimes you kind of just, you got to do the hard things as well that you may not enjoy, kind of just to get, maybe to get a deal done or whatever? Do you feel like it's not always do what you love, but you kind of have to do the difficult things as well? Doing
what you love doesn't mean that you do what you love 100% of the time, right? Yeah. If you can get to doing what you love 50% of the time, you've cracked it.
Yeah.
you're now in like nirvana, right? And I always, you know, I've been playing sports of some description for most of my life, and business to me is akin to sport. When you are training, it's difficult, but you love it at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? And there are going to be some aspects of that training that you don't like, but overall, it's contributing to the thing that you're passionate about, right? So, you know, if you've got to do drills, if you've got to, you know, run long distances, when you're achy, when you're injured, all of that stuff is the hard stuff in business that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
But it's contributing overall to the thing that you love. So that's how I perceive it. If I can, you know, get to do 50% of the things that in the business that I love, and 50% is stuff that I've just got to grind through, then I'm winning.
Yeah, so I know you, as you said, you do a lot of sports, you was at the gym and all this stuff, and that's something I'm trying to do, and I feel like people my age are trying to get into a routine. So I wanted to ask, is there maybe 5 habits that you have developed over the years that you think are key to where you are now?
Number one habit is consistency, because you're not always going to be inspired and motivated to do things. But if you're consistent, what that does is consistency creates new habits, and habits over time become part of your identity. So you now do them on autopilot. So if somebody was going to describe me, they'd say he's an entrepreneur and he always goes to the gym,
Yeah.
right? And he's always around his kids.
Yeah.
Those are probably the 3 things that people would associate me with. Family, you know, entrepreneur in whatever order, entrepreneurship, family, and gym. That's now my identity.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't have to think about getting up and going to the gym. I just do it on autopilot, to the point where if I don't go to the gym, if I don't spend time with my family, if I don't exercise my ambitions as an entrepreneur, I don't feel congruent in myself. So for me, what I'm saying is, whatever it is you want to become, be consistent with it and do it whether or not you feel like it or not. That's the bit, that's the cheat code bit, because you're not always going to feel like doing the thing that you know you should do, but do it anyway.
Yeah.
And that takes courage, if I'm honest, because you're battling something internal, but you've just got to overcome that and just, you know, there was a saying I heard a long time ago, feel the fear and do it anyway. I don't feel like getting up, do it anyway. I don't feel like going to the gym, do it anyway. I don't feel like making that sales call, do it anyway. I don't feel like writing that proposal, do it anyway. Right? Don't let your feelings get in the way of the thing that you want to do, because your feelings, you can't control them. Yeah. As much as you think we think we can, you can't.
Yeah. You
can't control your feelings, but what you can control is your response to those feelings and whether or not those responses prevent you from doing the things that you need to do or not.
Yeah. I think that's true. As I said, it's not just doing what you love all the time, which I think is true. And even after this, I've been debating if I should go to the gym or not. So as we're short of time, I've got a little game that I want us to play. Mm-hmm. So there's two games. The first one is called Guess the Net Worth. So I'm going to give you 5 or 6 of the most famous entrepreneurs, and I want you to guess their net worth, see how well you've been studying the game. So the first one, no pressure, Richard Branson.
3 billion.
2.5.
Okay.
So very close. A controversial one at the moment, Elon Musk.
Elon Musk isn't he worth like half a trillion or something now?
Very, very close. 433. So, but from what I've seen, it's always going up and down. Yeah. Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos is maybe about 300 to 400 billion. Sorry.
2.3. Okay. No, 239. Sorry. So yeah, very nearly. Bill Gates.
Bill Gates is about the same as Jeff Bezos.
Little less.
Oh really?
Okay. 106 billion.
Okay.
Mark Zuckerberg. I'd imagine this one's up and down all the time.
Mark Zuckerberg, I would imagine is about between 300 and 400 billion.
211. You're overestimating these. And the last one, which is actually a really interesting one, Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett is, I want to go with maybe 100 billion.
Yeah, 140. His story is actually really interesting because he didn't make most of his money until he was like over 60, which I find really interesting. So there's still hope for us. And the last game I want to play is this one might be a bit difficult. I want you to guess the age that they made their first million.
Mm-hmm.
So Richard Branson.
First million would have been in his 20s.
Yeah, so he was early 20s. He was 23.
Mm-hmm.
So Elon Musk.
Elon Musk would have been, again, in his 20s, late 20s.
Yeah, he was 27. Yeah, I think he had a few businesses before that. Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos, I believe, was probably a bit older. I want to say mid-30s.
Yeah, 33. Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, 20s.
Yeah, he was 26. Mark Zuckerberg.
He was like 12. Yeah, I believe he was maybe 19.
He was 22.
Oh, right.
Which, that's still very young. And the last one, Warren Buffett.
First million. Warren Buffett, 40?
30.
Okay.
Well, I think by the time he was 60, he had made 5 billion, and then he made all the rest afterwards. And the last question I wanted to ask you is, what is the end goal for your whole business journey? Or for you as a person, what's your end goal?
So the end goal for Ultra Education is for it to exist forever.
Yeah.
That's the point. So when you hear about these organizations that have been around for hundreds of years, that's going to be Ultra. So the idea is that it lives way past me, and in 100 years' time, there is a mechanism for young people to still learn about business and entrepreneurship, financial literacy through an organization called Ultra something.
Yeah.
So that's the end goal. So the end goal is for there not to be an end. It's called the infinite game. Is the idea is that it's played. Ultra is played forever.
Yeah.
And then for me personally, is to be able to kind of realize as many of my, at least 90% of my business ambitions, before I, move on to another life. I've got lots of business ideas.
Yeah.
Ultra will always remain, but there's spin-offs, there's a lot of other things that I want to do. And personally, I'm compelled, I have to birth those other children.
Are you one of these people, ideas will come into your head and then you get really attached and you think you have to go for it?
Yeah, but I've learned that you can't be attached to everything because some things are just shiny objects. Most things are shiny objects.
Yeah.
And so you have to really whittle down and be strategic. So it's not that I can do everything at once, but I will timeline them all and get them done at some point.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much for your time.
All good.
Of course, make sure you subscribe, and hopefully more episodes coming soon. As I say, I'll try and be consistent. So yeah, follow Julian, follow Ultra Education, and follow me, of course. Thank you for watching, guys. Thank you, Julian.
Cheers.